Hey friends, Kim Brown at the Christian Renewal Center, and it's time for Saintly Saturday. Wait a second, who's overlooking my shoulder? Why, I think today's Saintly Saturday, we're going to talk about Saint Teresa of Avila, reformer of the Carmelite order known as the Shoeless Carmelites, doctor of the church and great mystic, fantastic, really a lady with great sense of humor. Her books I find very funny, but not only are they very funny, but they're very profound, very spiritually rich and deep. And so today we're going to talk about the 5 spiritual lessons we can learn on this Saintly Saturday from the Christian Renewal Center from Saint Teresa of Avila. So the first spiritual lesson we're going to learn from her is the importance of contemplative prayer. Whenever I give a retreat and I talk about prayer, I explain to people the 3 levels of prayer: vocal, meditative, and contemplative. And I always will reference our great Mother Teresa of Avila, and I'll say she believed all of us were called to contemplative prayer life, right? But most of us haven't given that opportunity for that groundwork with God. So vocal prayer is the prayer that we say out loud or we say it just in our head. Meditative prayer is where we move from the monologue of vocal prayer to a conversation. And contemplative prayer is really where we allow God to do the monologue. We're really listening for Him, and we're not doing so much of the talking. Second spiritual lesson we can learn from Saint Teresa of Avila is self-knowledge, that awareness. She believed that this was a prerequisite for spiritual growth. If you don't know your own weaknesses, if you think just everything about you is so great and you don't need to grow at all, well, then you don't think you need to grow, which means you're not going to grow, right? So she believed this self-knowledge was a really important thing, because by understanding our own weaknesses and our limitations, this helps us to grow in virtue as well as into a true relationship with God, right? Where we can really speak freely with Him. So self-knowledge, which when we know our weaknesses, that means humility, right? So we will see humility as a common theme often with spiritual lessons with the saints. The third thing that we learn from Saint Teresa of Avila is detachment from worldly things. When she was in her first convent as a Carmelite, one of the reasons that she felt called to leave and start the disclass Carmelites, the shoeless Carmelites, was because they were attached, she felt, too much to worldly things, even in the convent, right? And you and I, living in the world, how often do we get attached to worldly things? Whether it's, our vacations, it's our cars, it's our clothing, it's our trips, it's our going out to eat. There's all these worldly things, our habits and our hobbies that we can get attached to, right? So we learn from Saint Teresa of Avila that detachment from worldly things, she wanted to pull away from the world so that she could draw closer to God. The fourth spiritual lesson we learn from Saint Teresa of Avila is the role of interior silence. So in interior silence, what we're learning there is she would emphasize the value of not having all this dialogue constantly running, right? And the solitude was essential for us to encounter God. Now, when you think about interior silence, right? Think about that cell phone in your pocket that when it vibrates, you're reaching down to do it. Think about how you ended up on this video. Did you intentionally come to look at our Saintly Saturday, or were you scrolling and you came upon this video? So it's really important for us to have interior silence. Even good things can be noise, and it pulls us away from God. So if we really want to have the contemplative prayer life, we have to allow the silence so that we can hear God in our life. The fifth spiritual lesson we learn from Saint Teresa of Avila is active participation in a spiritual community. So even though she desired interior silence, and even though she lived a lot of her life with interior silence, she knew the importance of community, and having a community that not only do you have, but that you're actively participating in, that you're engaging with. And so there is a balance between the interior life of contemplative solitude and being with other people. Because as we read in the Bible, as we read in Genesis, God created us for community, right? So it's not that we just go up on a mountaintop by ourselves with God alone, but that we want other people to go on that mountaintop with us. And so Saint Teresa of Avila, we see her active participating in the spiritual community. And so who is it in your life, your community, that can help you to grow? And recognize we say spiritual community, right? So it's okay if you belong to an athletic club. It's okay if you belong to a car enthusiast club. It's okay if you go out kayaking or these other things. But do you have a group that spiritually is your community? Do you have a group that's helping you to grow in holiness? Do you have a group that you talk about your prayer experiences with? Do you have a group that you can say, I was reading the other day and I came across this in Interior Castle, or I was reading A Way of Perfection and this is what I encountered. So these are 5 spiritual lessons we learned from the great Saint Teresa of Avila. She's one of my big 3 favorite saints that has really come to me in my life. And I hope that you can take away some of these spiritual lessons and apply them to your own spiritual life. God bless.